There's something unsettling that happens before we make decisions that change our love life. It's as if the universe whispers warnings, sending silent signals we try to ignore. Have you ever felt a sudden tightening in your chest for no reason? Ever hesitated without knowing why when faced with someone who seemed perfect? Perhaps these sensations aren't mere insecurities, but profound messages from the unconscious, where the true guide of our emotional journey resides. According to the principles of analytical psychology, these warnings are not coincidences. They reflect an ancient knowing within us, striving to keep us from repeating old patterns, striving to protect us from loves that aren't ours to have. In this video, you'll learn how the universe communicates before a romantic mistake and what to do when those signs appear. If you believe that intuition is the soul's sacred language, comment below. I hear the universe's signals. When we draw close to making a mistaken romantic choice, internal and external forces begin to work silently to alert us. Carl Jung's analytical psychology offers a powerful key to understanding these movements. According to Jung, we're on a journey of individuation, a process of integrating everything unconscious within us, and it is in relationships that this integration manifests most intensely. Before a romantic mistake, the universe, or rather the personal and collective unconscious, sends signals. They may appear in symbolic dreams, restless feelings, synchronicities, or even inexplicable discomfort. This happens because we often project onto others what is missing in ourselves, creating illusions. Jung called this projection. We see desired attributes in someone who, in reality, is far from nourishing us in a true way. Moreover, the shadow, the repressed side of the psyche, also plays a role in these encounters. Often we attract people who mirror what we deny in ourselves, and the universe, acting like a symbolic mirror, tries to warn us through discomfort or meaningful coincidences. The language of the self, the regulating center of the psyche, speaks at these moments to push us toward authenticity rather than the repetition of destructive patterns. By understanding these signals and accepting that true love only blooms when there is internal alignment, we create space for genuine transformation. The universe does not punish us, but teaches us, and the warnings it sends before a romantic mistake are, in fact, invitations to consciousness. Just before we dive into a relationship that doesn't serve us, the universe, or, as Jung would say, the unconscious, begins to whisper. It doesn't speak in words but in symbols, images, feelings, and events that seem disconnected from logic. Strange dreams, persistent premonitions, and repetitive coincidences arise as signs that something inside us knows what our conscious mind has yet to recognize. It is the unconscious's language, attempting to prevent us from following a path that will lead us away from our true essence. Dreams, in particular, are one of the most direct channels of communication from the unconscious. Jung saw them as symbolic messages revealing hidden truths. When we're about to involve ourselves with someone who represents more a repetition of unconscious patterns than a true choice, our dreams often become disturbing. Dreaming of crossroads, ruined houses, or losing something valuable are just some of the symbolic images that can indicate emotional danger. These nocturnal visions invite us to look within and question what we're projecting onto the other person and why. Beyond dreams, synchronicities, meaningful events that occur coincidentally without causal explanation, also emerge as signs. Jung believed these happen when there is alignment between our internal state and external circumstances. You might, for example, think intensely about ending a relationship and then hear a song about emotional liberation. Or you might repeatedly see the same symbol, such as butterflies, transformation, or broken clocks, wrong timing, at moments when you feel doubts about the relationship. These occurrences are not mere chance. They are mirrors of the unconscious revealing truths you haven't yet dared to face. Ignoring these signals means silencing the ancestral wisdom within us. The unconscious carries memories, traumas, and patterns that often repeat generation after generation. It tries to protect us from the pain of reliving the same story, even if it must cause discomfort or confusion to do so. When you feel an inexplicable weight beside someone, or when something feels off, even though everything seems perfect on the surface, it may be the unconscious resisting a union that doesn't resonate with your individuation process. The wisdom of the unconscious lies in its impartiality. It doesn't judge, it only reveals. It shows us what is unresolved. That's why these signals shouldn't be seen as punishments but as invitations to awareness. The more familiar we become with the symbols surrounding us, the more we understand that life is speaking to us all the time. Listening to these messages is like learning a new language, the language of the soul. In the context of love, this listening becomes even more crucial. Love is one of the greatest catalysts for psychic transformation. It is within relationships that our complexes, traumas, and unconscious expectations are most deeply stirred. Therefore, it's natural for the unconscious to move intensely when we draw close to someone who, unknowingly, poses a threat to our internal balance. It's important to develop a personal practice of paying attention to the signs. Write down your dreams, reflect on synchronicities, observe recurring emotional patterns. When the soul tries to warn you, it doesn't shout, it whispers. And it is within these whispers that we find the possibility of avoiding a romantic mistake that would distance us from ourselves. Not every relationship that comes our way is destined to flourish. Some appear simply so we can learn to say no. And the unconscious, with its symbolic language, always tries to show us this before it's too late. Many of the greatest romantic mistakes begin not with the other person, but with what we project onto them. When we fall in love, it's common to idealize, seeing more of what we want to see than what is actually there. Jung identified this phenomenon as projection, a mechanism by which we transfer our own unconscious contents onto another, believing we're seeing something real when in fact we're looking at a symbolic mirror. Projection is inevitable, especially in the early stages of a relationship. We project desires, traumas, hopes, and even archetypes. Sometimes we see in someone the figure of the savior, the caregiver, the soulmate, when in reality we're just trying to find lost aspects of ourselves. This idealization creates an image that overshadows reality, generating expectations that sooner or later will shatter. It is precisely at this point that the universe, or more accurately, the unconscious, begins to send out alerts. We feel a subtle discomfort, small contradictions start to appear, and signs that something is amiss multiply, not because the other person is wrong or bad, but because they are not what we projected. They cannot sustain the fantasy we've built. And love built on projection is fragile, for it depends on maintaining an illusion. Idealization blinds us to reality. We ignore problematic behaviors, justify incoherent actions, and convince ourselves that it's just a phase, or no one is perfect. But in truth, we're trying to keep alive the idealized image we've placed on the other, often at the expense of our inner peace. The soul senses when there is imbalance. The unconscious becomes uneasy with internal lies and sends warnings. Emotional tension, anxiety attacks, sudden low moods, difficulty sleeping. All of these can be the psyche's response to a relationship based on projection. Jung argued that a true relationship begins when projection ends. It is then that we can really see the other as they are, with their strengths and limitations, and consciously decide if we want to be with them. Awareness breaks the enchantment, but also allows freedom. We no longer love out of neediness, but by choice. And that is the essence of mature love. Before a wrong romantic choice, projection is typically at its peak. That is why the warnings intensify. Reality tries to pierce the bubble of fantasy. Situations we once ignored begin to hurt more. Words and actions we once rationalized become hard to tolerate. Yet, for fear of losing what we idealized, we persist. And the price of that persistence is often disconnection from ourselves. Breaking free from projection is an act of courage and self-love. It requires looking within and acknowledging what we seek in another that we should find in ourselves. If we project a need for protection, perhaps we are neglecting our own strength. If we project admiration, perhaps we have forgotten to value our own achievements. The other serves as a mirror, but the reflection always reveals what we carry inside. The task of individuation necessarily involves recovering these lost parts and integrating them into our conscious being. Only then do we stop seeking in others what we lack. Paradoxically, it is at that point that we become more capable of love, because we no longer love from a place of lack, but from wholeness. Love ceases to be an escape from loneliness and transforms into an extension of plenitude. The universe does not want to deprive us of love. It wants to guide us to the right love, the one born of truth, awareness, and inner freedom. When we realize that idealization is a trap fashioned by our unhealed wounds, we have the chance to stop before we fall, and that realization is, in itself, an act of healing. The shadow, according to Carl Jung, represents all aspects of our psyche that we reject, hide, or repress, everything we don't accept as part of ourselves. And the more we deny this hidden part, the more it manifests externally, especially in relationships. The shadow is insistent. What we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves, we end up attracting in others. Often, this is how we find ourselves entangled in toxic relationships that at first glance seemed promising. Before a romantic mistake, it's common for the shadow to act with full force. The person who attracts us may represent precisely what we deny or fear in ourselves. A controlling individual may draw in someone who represses their own power. An emotionally unavailable person may catch the attention of someone who never learned to validate their own needs. The relationship begins as an encounter of opposites, but over time reveals itself as a field of internal conflict projected onto external coexistence. When this happens, the universe, or more accurately, the unconscious, tries to protect us. But since it doesn't speak in words, it uses discomfort, painful repetitions, and seemingly senseless crises. It's as if it says, "Here lies something you need to see," and that something usually resides within us. The toxic patterns we tolerate, the subtle violences we normalize, and the cycles of emotional dependency we perpetuate reveal parts of the shadow that have yet to be integrated. Jung did not view the shadow as purely negative. In fact, it holds immense potential for growth. When we acknowledge and integrate it, we become more whole, more conscious, more free. The problem is, until that happens, the shadow acts on our behalf, choosing our partners, creating our conflicts, feeding our illusions. And in those moments, the universe acts as a mirror, placing us before people and situations that reflect what we are not yet willing to face. Toxic relationships don't happen by chance. They emerge to reveal something unconscious. The mistake isn't in loving, but in remaining unconscious of what love reveals. If we keep getting involved with those who hurt us, perhaps there is a wound in us that has yet to be recognized. If we repeat bonds where we are not respected, perhaps we are denying our own worth. The other simply shows us unflinchingly what we lack the courage to confront. It is at this point that the universe's signs become clearer. A constant feeling of exhaustion, the loss of one's identity, the sense that something vital is being drained. These are all alerts. And often, these signs appear even before the pain fully sets in. An initial unease, a behavioral shift, an overblown emotional reaction. They are manifestations of the shadow striving to emerge, seeking to be seen, accepted, embraced. Ignoring these signs and persisting in the relationship carries a high price. The soul falls ill, vitality wanes, the sparkle fades. That's because the unconscious cannot tolerate living in dissonance for long. It demands truth, integration, authenticity. And when we are stuck in relationships that pull us away from these, the body itself begins to manifest symptoms: insomnia, anxiety, deep sadness. These are ways the universe tells us that something must change. Acknowledging the shadow requires courage. It demands admitting that part of the problem lies within, not just without. But this courage is liberating. When we look at our shadow with compassion, it ceases to dominate us. We begin to choose more consciously, recognize patterns before they repeat, and say no firmly when something resonates with old traumas. The shadow is not an enemy. It is a guide. And the toxic relationships it draws to us are not punishments, but temporary teachers. They teach us through pain what we need to transform. The universe, through these relationships, offers us a chance to wake up. And when we finally do, we realize that the romantic mistake we avoided was not merely a right choice. It was a crucial step on the path of individuation. Individuation, a central concept in Carl Jung's analytical psychology, is the process by which an individual becomes what they essentially are. A journey of integration between conscious and unconscious, reason and instinct, light and shadow. Along this path, every choice, every relationship, and every loss plays a crucial role. And when it comes to love, the individuation process becomes even more demanding. This is because effective relationships are living mirrors that reveal, at every interaction, the degree of alignment we have with our soul. Conscious love is not one without conflicts or difficulties, but one that emerges from inner wholeness. Unlike needy love, based on seeking external fulfillment, conscious love arises from the meeting of two whole individuals who do not merge, do not negate each other, and do not save each other. They are two souls walking side by side, not two halves trying to complete each other. When we are distant from our individuation process, we tend to make romantic choices based on lack, fear of loneliness, desire for control, or escape from ourselves. These choices, though wrapped in passion, almost always lead to repeated pain. It is at this point that the universe becomes an ally, sending signals so that we may awaken. Misalignments, unexpected crises, painful breakups, or even seemingly external obstacles can be symbolic manifestations of the unconscious, inviting us to rethink our effective paths. Aligning with the soul means, first and foremost, recognizing oneself. It requires diving into one's inner world, understanding one's complexes, wounds, and deepest desires. This implies embracing the shadow, acknowledging projections, listening to dreams, and respecting intuitions. Each of these elements is part of the process of becoming whole. And the more whole we are, the more clearly we can discern what resonates with us and what does not. Choosing a partner consciously means observing, with honesty, what emerges in the bond. How do I feel beside this person? Can I be myself without fear of rejection? Do I grow or diminish in this space? Conscious love does not idealize, but it also does not settle for less. It arises from the meeting of internal truth and external reality. It requires neither perfection nor illusions, but presence, listening, and commitment to one's own process. Jung said that meeting another is, above all, meeting one's own unconscious. That is why before any romantic relationship, there is a silent preparation happening within us. The choices we make, the patterns we repeat, the mistakes we avoid or insist on reliving, all are parts of this preparation. The universe warns us when we are about to betray our essence. It speaks through the body, emotion, coincidence, and dream. We only need to pay attention. Conscious love also means knowing how to wait. Not in the sense of passivity, but in the sense of respecting internal timing. Sometimes a relationship hasn't blossomed because there are wounds to heal. Sometimes the love of your life only arrives when you stop seeking in others what you lack in yourself. And when that moment comes, there is no more fear, no more confusion. There is clarity, lightness, and depth. To individuate is not to become perfect, but to become true. And the love that springs from that truth is naturally healing. It does not demand effort to maintain appearances because it is already rooted in authenticity. It does not feed on control but on freedom. And above all, it does not arise by chance. It arises from the convergence of two beings who have journeyed deeply within themselves enough to recognize in the other a resonance of their own soul. When conscious love emerges, it does not eliminate the challenges of life together, but offers a solid foundation for facing them. There is room for dialogue, mutual growth, and acceptance of differences. And even if that love must one day part, it will leave marks of expansion, not destruction. Therefore, aligning our effective choices with the soul is, above all, a commitment to our own path. It is understanding that the universe does not sabotage us but guides us, and that the warnings before a romantic mistake are, in fact, divine protections, shaped to keep us on the trail of individuation toward a love that is home, not prison. In every effective decision, conscious or not, we carry the marks of what we have been and the signs of what we are destined to become. The universe, through the unconscious, does not fall silent in the face of deviations. It warns, alerts, and redirects. Whether through unsettling dreams, intriguing synchronicities, persistent pains, or repeating encounters, there is always a greater intelligence at work, guiding us with firmness and gentleness away from choices that would take us further from our essence. Jung's psychology shows us that true love is not built on emotional blindness, but on the lucidity of self-knowledge. Avoiding a romantic mistake is not losing an opportunity. It is protecting the soul from repeating stories that no longer serve. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. Leave a comment about the signs you've noticed before a relationship. And don't leave before watching the video on screen. It will deepen your loving awareness even further. Your transformation begins with a yes to your truth.